Hello, hello, and hi, and welcome to a Beatles podcast, actually a solo Beatles podcast called Talk More Talk. This is a bi weekly show that we do here on Facebook every 2 weeks, and we talk about the solo careers of the Beatles, which I'm always proud to say is the most successful solo careers in the history of music from any artist that came from a previous group. And I'm Ken Michaels. Hopefully, you guys know me for my syndicated Beatles radio program called Every Little Thing, currently heard on almost 40 radio stations. And I'm also part of another Beatles podcast called Things We Said Today. And I'm being joined by my esteemed colleagues here on the show. Let me introduce each one of them to you. First of all, we have the queen of all Beatles media. She might as well just be the queen of all media.
Ooh,
And well, she
I like
pretty much
that.
tackles everything. But you know her for a couple of books that she's written called Songs We Were Singing, Guided Tours Through the Beatles' Lesser Works. Also, Michael Jackson, FAQ, All That's Left to Know About the King of Pop. She has these long titles for books, by the way. She writes Deep Tracks, all about the deeper tracks of the Beatles, which is a wonderful column that she writes on a regular basis. And we welcome Kit O'Toole. Bye, Kit.
Thank you, Ken. That was quite an introduction. Hi, guys, and hello, everybody. That's somebody just called me Howard Stern's mate. No, no.
We could start a rumor.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Don't want that.
Also on the show is the guy that you know as being one of the two regular co-hosts for a Paul McCartney solo Paul McCartney podcast called Two Legs. He's been with us since the very beginning. Great guy, Tom Hunyadi. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Ken. Thank you very much. Hi, Kit. Hi, Joe. And another fun episode. Look forward to it.
And also we have with us, substituting for Ken Womack this time out, Mean Mr. Mayo. We call him Joe here. Mean Mr. Mayo has a very popular YouTube channel, talks about the Beatles all the time, has a lot of fans. He's bringing over here. Thank you very much, Joe.
Yeah.
And also talks a lot about movies, on YouTube as well. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you very much, Ken. Hello there, Kit, the Sun Queen, as I like to call you. And hello there, Tom. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, buddy.
Great.
You've got to get more nicknames for Kit with every show.
Yeah.
I know. Listen, getting more.
I come up with some more. I'll think of some.
And and Tom, you just got a compliment. It says Tom's album wall looks cool.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Very nice.
I'm also known for having the messiest room of all of us here. And I'm going to get Joe and Tom to help fix up this place because it needs a lot of work.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't need to convince anybody.
You don't want to see what's behind that help sign that I have, do you? There's a reason why I put that up there at the end of the thingamajig.
But I love how you have the Stop and Smell the Roses stand up from Ringo right behind you.
Sure. It looks like he joined the Village People. I get a lot of comments like that, Not that there's anything wrong with that.
You need to bring him a little closer to you for the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. When we talk about the album one day, I'll have him standing right here.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Very nice. Love seeing the Give My Regards to Broad Street at the top there of the shelves too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
On the show tonight, we've got a very interesting topic called Mythbusters. And I guess for the most part, we'll talk about the solo careers in this aspect of it, although I'm opening up the doors if you want to throw Beatles stuff into as a group. But I'm sure through the years you've come across information that maybe you've doubted whether it's accurate or not. And we want to talk about that on the show tonight. Not only just stuff, whether it's accurate or inaccurate, but we'll also talk about things that are really, and this could even be more common, unsubstantiated. And that's something that's very important to me because I've been doing radio shows on the Beatles since 1982. The most important thing to me is to give accurate information on the Beatles. It's very hard to do that week after week when you're relying on books, which have some inaccuracies. And now with the internet being as big as it is, a lot of those inaccuracies and things that are not substantiated get spread like wildfire. So because of that, this is a very important topic for me to cover. I want you guys watching to add whatever comments you have, maybe some things you want to bring up that fit that category, and maybe we'll tackle that. Before we do that, we have the latest in Beatle news. Did one of you guys want to say something?
Take it away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, good one.
First of all, very important. I hope everyone watching knows tonight Paul McCartney is on Stephen Colbert's show. Show airs at 11:30, and I'm guessing. Well, he's got a lot of stuff to promote right now. Hey, Grand Dude, his new children's book. There's also the Linda McCartney book, the Polaroid Diaries, which we'll talk about in a moment. And I don't know, some album called Abbey Road, 50th anniversary, coming out this Friday. Box set for that. So in addition to Paul being on Stephen Colbert, I have heard that Ringo will be on The Tonight Show sometime this week. I don't know which day, though. But it's not live. There's actually something that was pre-taped during the summer. It's a classroom instrument segment, which I'm sure Jimmy Fallon will get involved with Ringo. Not sure which day. It's supposed to be sometime this week. So don't forget Paul tonight and Ringo sometime this week on The Tonight Show. Paul on Stephen Colbert.
So in a way, we're kind of opening for Paul. We're the opening act.
Yes, we are. we planned it that way.
Yes, exactly.
Or for any late night show.
That's right.
Yeah.
And since
True.
I just mentioned Ringo, his new album, What's My Name, which we've talked about here on the show, is due out October the 25th. It's coming out on CD, digitally, on vinyl, and limited edition blue vinyl. But the title track to What's My Name has come out. At least Universal has let it come out, and it's been on the internet. You can listen to it off YouTube. All you guys have heard the song.
Yep.
What do you think of Ringo's new song, What's My Name? We'll start with Tom.
Well, it's I think it's a nice rocker. The two things that stood out to me right away was the guitar playing by Colin Hay and Steve Lukather. I thought that was some of the heavier guitar playing I've heard on a Ringo track over the last few years. I also love the harmonica by Warren Ham. I thought that was a nice touch with the with for the song. And to have Colin Hay write the song for Ringo, I think this is a lot of nice, like a career retrospective of Ringo, and I think it's really nice of him to do something like that. I think this is probably one of only two songs that Ringo won't have a co-write on the album. I like he's got the out on the road thing going, the peace and love thing going. The vocals are, okay, but, again, it's really the instrumentation for me on this track that I really enjoy the most.
Okay, well put. Colin Hay, by the way, from what I understand, Ringo said that it was an older song that he had written.
Right. And matter of fact, he wanted to play the song for him, and then when Ringo told him to bring it up, apparently he had lost the lyrics or the lyric sheet or whatever, and then found it like on the bottom of a pile in a drawer somewhere. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, because he's been touring with Ringo since 2012 or 14 was it? When was the first one?
It's around
that time. Yeah. So
yeah, he's been on several All-Star Band tours, but really enjoyable song. It's kind of ironic that the lyrics really fit Ringo's life and his career.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything's the same, and I'm still in the game. What's my name?
So
it could have been about Colin writing about himself, but it really works for Ringo.
Works for Ringo, correct?
Right.
Yeah. The only other thing that probably I would have liked to have seen is when he does do "What's the Name," and then the two backup singers do Ringo. I would have kind of liked to have seen that kind of modified a little bit more, just maybe a little louder or more backing vocals sing that part. Kind of just like at a live show. Make it feel more like you're at a live show. So, but that's my thoughts.
Kit, how about you?
I really enjoy it. I think Ringo sounds pretty energized. I think. I mean, he seems to have a lot of fun doing this song, and why not? Because it is fun, and I think Colin Hay wrote it perfectly to suit him. And maybe an old older song, but I really think, I mean, the lyrics are charming. And I couldn't believe the number of comments, and I'm sure you guys saw this too, on the internet. Oh, it's just, it's just a lightweight thing. Well, yes, I mean, it's nothing, nothing brainy, but does it have to be? I mean, I just think it's a fun rocker. I can absolutely see him playing this. This is probably going to be his opening song during, on his tours, and that's fine. I think it's fun, gets the audience involved. As you said, Tom, love the guitar. And the harmonica. It's a great, straightforward rocker. And it almost, almost 80. I mean, that's pretty damn good. And it just immediately grabbed me from the first time I heard it. And I haven't had that from Ringo for a while. So again, nothing brainy. I know it's just fun, but to paraphrase Paul, what's wrong with that?
I know. So much, much of what Ringo does is lightweight, and just fun. And what is wrong with having that as, most of the songs that you've done in your career?
Right.
What were we going to say, Tom?
Yeah, I just like the fact that they did.
Is there anything left?
I did like the fact that they did choose this for the opening single, if you will. Because I know there was reports that "Grow Old with Me" was going to be the opening single, but I'm kind of glad they switched it up.
Yeah, this is a better choice. First song, I think.
I agree. I think so.
Okay. Some more from Joe.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how much more there is to say. Everybody kind of said what I was going to say. It took me a couple of listens, well, only because, when I listen to Ringo, I've said this before, some people say it's not fair that I do this, but I say, well, it's Ringo. So I kind of expect kind of less. I just expect Ringo's charm, his personality, fun, to come through, everything that we know Ringo is, that we love about Ringo. And on that note, after a couple of listens, I started to really get into the song, and I enjoy the song. I think it's fun. I know that's a cliche by now already, but nothing great. I'm not going to say it's a great song. I think it's a fun signature song for Ringo, being that that's always what he says at shows, "What's my name?" And I think it's going to be, hopefully he'll do the song and play live, and which he didn't play. We know about "Give More Love," how he started and then stopped playing, and it'll be a great audience reaction song, I think. So I think to hear them, maybe the audience going "Ringo" in that part, might be a good incentive. Hopefully Ringo's thinking like that.
Right.
But the song itself, I mean, it seems like the kind of other, generic kind of rockers that fit Ringo, like "We're on the Road Again" from "Give More Love," Rory and the Hurricanes from "Postcards from Paradise." I like it. You need an upbeat, go Ringo type of song. As I say, nothing that's going to set the world on fire. It doesn't have to.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to. It's enjoyable. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the album, especially that "Grow Old with Me" redo.
Yeah.
I want to hear what that's going to sound like. And I like the title for the album as well, of "What's My Name?" And the cover has a really cool pin of John. Ringo's sporting a John Lennon pin. And I think that's such a nice touch. Although, a lot of people were joking, is it going to be another thing of Ringo with the peace sign? Yes, it is. But I do like the John button, and I also like the color scheme. I think it's nice. Yeah. So it's eye catching, and so far I'm really psyched for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I am too.
I like the song as well. It's upbeat. It's got a lot of energy, as you guys have said. I love the guitar playing, which I believe is Steve Lukather playing there. It certainly sounds like Steve's guitar playing. I can never get enough of his playing when I see the band live. And it does remind me a lot of, like you said, Joe, a lot of, the more generic Ringo songs of the last several albums. I love the crisp production. I love how his drums are mixed up hot, and interesting drum fills. Very much like "We're on the Road Again" to me, which is a song I've said here. I don't know why they didn't do live. I mean, "We're on the Road Again." Steve Lukather co-wrote the song. He's in the band. So, since Ringo always does that shtick, "What's My Name?" I can't imagine him not doing this song live. Yeah. He really should. But the only thing I'm not happy about, I'm not a big fan of when vocals are pushed back.
Mm.
and
Oh
Ringo's new
yes, good
vocals
point.
sound like they're distant, and I'm not
That's
crazy
true.
about that.
Yeah.
But I like the song, and it's catchy, and it works. You know.
Yeah, I mean, let's just hope that this is not more, more of the same on the album with those vocals. Hopefully it's just the one track, because I did feel the same way where the vocals may have been a little pushed back. So
Hmm.
let's just, hope it won't turn into a trend.
Yeah.
That's true. True.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
uh,
Other news
yeah.
here, and since we're talking about Ringo, he's taken part in a new recording of the classic song from the band, "The Wait," as part of the Playing for Change campaign. This is a group that is dedicated to break down the boundaries and overcome distances between people. That includes 15 music schools across 11 countries, making documentaries and viral videos, bringing artists from different cultures together. This project was a year and a half in the making and
Wow.
has Robbie Robertson from the band playing on it, along with musicians from all over the world from 5 different countries. I mean, sorry, 5 different continents.
Yeah.
And the video was made in which Ringo actually introduces the song by asking Robbie on his cell phone, what key is this in? Like that matters for a drummer. What
Right.
key is this in? And then he says F demented. So if you want to find out more about this organization and watch the video, you can go to playingforchange.com.
Mhm.
Okay. It was a very big reunion of sorts to celebrate the launch of the new Linda McCartney photo book, which is called Linda McCartney: The Polaroid Diaries from Taschen Books. This was at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. On hand was Paul with daughters Mary and Stella. James was there, and so was Nancy, his wife, although they weren't photographed, James and Nancy. Ringo Starr and Barbara Bach, and Olivia Harrison.
Mhm.
Okay, they were
Wow.
all there to celebrate this book. Chrissy Hine was there as well as Twiggy.
Hmm.
After a private cocktail reception, Paul, Mary, and Stella joined 275 Victoria and Albert members for a conversation about the book, and Linda's photographic work was moderated by critic and author Ikao Ishin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This was followed by a book signing in the Silver Galleries of the museum. Paul, Mary, and Stella were interviewed for a TV program called Newsnight, which aired on the BBC World News Cable channel, and all to promote the new Linda McCartney book. Something really interesting that I found out just a few days ago on Facebook, there is an off Broadway show currently running through September 28th, and it's called Only Yesterday. Now, the play is based on snippets of an interview that Terry Gross conducted with Paul McCartney on NPR for her show Fresh Air back in 2001, in which Paul talked about his tribute song for John Here Today. And in particular, the part in the song where Paul sings, "What about the night we cried?" Because there wasn't any reason left to keep it all inside. A few times, Paul has talked about the story of how during the group's 1964 US tour, they had to make an unexpected stop in Key West, Florida, on their way to their show in Jacksonville, and it was delayed because of Hurricane Dora. Apparently, in their hotel room, John and Paul did a lot of talking about their lives and career, about fame and loss and grief. So, this play apparently is all about that.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Bob Stevens is the producer of this play, and he is no stranger to nostalgia, having served as a producer and writer for the TV show The Wonder Years. It's running at 59 East 59th Street Theaters, and this is running, as I said, through September the 28th. Again, it's called Only Yesterday. If you're interested, you can call this number. It's 212 279 4200. 212 279 4200. I also wanted to mention, since we talked about Peter Frampton in the last show, he's been doing his farewell tour, and he's been closing his show with While My Guitar Gently Weeps for his encore. And I also mentioned that as he leaves the stage, they play I'll See You in My Dreams. Uh, Joe Brown's recording of that, which was from the concert for George. Well, I also wanted to say that at Peter's show in Dallas, Texas, which was last Friday. He performed While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and joining him on stage was Eric
EC,
Clapton.
Wow.
Oh,
Eric
nice.
Clapton to do the
Wow.
song.
formerly known
So-
as God.
Yep.
So imagine two of the greatest guitarists on stage working on that song together.
Lucky
Now-
crowd.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to mention one more thing. Of course, we know that last weekend we suffered the deaths of two big rock stars with any money and Rick Ocasek from the Cars. Kind of ironic, guys. We were talking about people we wanted to see in Ringo's All-Star Band.
Yeah.
Rick
Yes.
Ocasek was
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
names that we brought up
Yeah,
here.
I
Yeah.
thought of him. Yeah, and it really hit me hard. I don't know. Yeah, maybe because it's when I grew up and I was going to clubs and things, and during that period, my late teens and early 20s, I've been playing the Cars hits for over a week or whatever now, just constantly playing it. So it's really affected me, especially with Rick Ocasek.
I agree, Joe. Yeah, that one it hit me. I mean, I felt terrible for Eddie Money too.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, Rick Ocasek. I mean, I grew up on the Cars, and Tom and I were talking a little bit about it. Summer of '84, I think it was.
MTV, MTV Cars were all over the place with that, and Magic and Shake It Up.
Yep.
It was,
I mean,
on the radio every hour, nonstop.
Exactly. So it's really, I agree. That one hit me particularly hard.
Yeah,
It's like
and in their careers of their heyday, when their most popular years were pretty much the same, 78, 70, 77, 78, all the way up until the mid 80s, 86, 87. So they had their careers pretty much mirrored each other with hit potentials and stuff like that. So
yeah, their albums are really strong, and in particular their first album I think is one of the greatest debut albums ever for many artists.
right up there with Boston.
Yep, absolutely. But I want to bring up the Cars and Rick Ocasek because one particular Cars song, My Best Friend's Girl, was actually influenced by a Beatles song in some way. Because if you listen to the song when Rick sings She Used to Be Mine, then you hear this guitar line being played. And that was actually taken, well, partly, it's not exactly the same, from the Beatles' I Will. If you listen to the two of them together. I know that members of the band have said that before.
Okay.
So, and also Greg Hawkes of the Cars got to work with Paul McCartney. He was on Flowers in the Dirt on Motor of Love. And Paul actually said to Greg, because I interviewed Greg about this, that Paul wanted Greg to come up with a sound that was similar in style and in sound to the Cars Drive.
Okay.
So think about that when you listen to Motor of Love.
Yeah.
Just
That's another amazing song too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love Drive better, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul.
It's funny too.
Sorry, Ken. Sorry, Ken.
I love how
That's
I
all right.
remember when, reading later on after the Cars heyday, they would both him and I think Bob Orr was the guy's name. Was it
Ben
Orr?
Orr. Ben Orr.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Benjamin Orr,
they would both sing lead vocals, and whoever's came out, better. That's what they when they decided who would get the lead vocal.
And they're similar. They sound kind of similar. A lot of people
in a way.
have difficulty telling one from the other. I've heard. I'm starting to be able to tell, but I remember for myself for a while. I thought Rick sang so many of the songs,
Right.
Rick
and
sang the majority of the hits.
Right.
But Ben sang Drive, and he also sang Just What I Needed. And he's gone
That's What I
too. He
Needed.
passed away quite a while ago.
Yeah.
But at least it's a good thing they made the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame while Rick was still.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, before we get to our main topic of myth busting, just want to remind everybody, Kit, if you want to tell everyone about the symposium for Abbey Road, which is coming up this weekend.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to be leaving Thursday, and it's going to be at University of Rochester. It's at the Eastman School of Music. Starts this Friday and goes through Sunday. Going to be a lot of speakers there, and Ken Womack will be there. Ken Townsend, who I'm really hoping to meet. You know, that'd be a thrill. Andy Babiuk and a number of leading Beatles scholars. It's going to be a great time. I'm presenting Friday afternoon, so I can then kick back the rest of the weekend and just soak all this in, which is kind of nice. But no, I'm looking forward to it.
You mean you're not going to have your usual hectic schedule like all the fest for Beatle fans?
No, nope. I'm just presenting Friday, and then yeah, I just get to enjoy the rest of it, which I fully plan on doing.
Awesome.
So, yep. So yes, I'm going to be presenting on "Oh Darling." Okay. And particularly, and I'm not going to explain it on here, partially because we don't have time, and partially because I want to keep everyone in suspense, how it owes a debt to a genre called swamp pop. So after the conference, I'll talk a little bit more about it, but that's going to be my presentation. So Friday, so you can still get tickets. As far as I know, you can go to the website. I'll put it up on our page, and hope you can join us for what should be a fascinating weekend.
Yeah, I'm sure that either our next show or within our next few shows, we're going to have to be doing something about Abbey Road with the new release coming out. So maybe we'll mix in part of that in the conversation.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Right on.
Okay, so as I said, our main topic on the show tonight is myth busting, talking about things we've heard about through the years that are inaccurate or, as I said before, unsubstantiated. Since I've been doing so much of the yakking here, maybe I'll let somebody else start. We've all picked like 2 or 3 examples of those that are important to us to discuss. Why don't we start with you, Joe?
All right. Let's see now. I have a few. Keeping it right now for the solo, although I also have a Beatles one. You mentioned, Ken, how, especially with social media, all these kind of rumors and gossipy things, gossip, spreads like wildfire. And I noticed that being on the internet, on YouTube a lot, and Facebook and whatnot. But one of the things that always gets under my skin that's really, I don't think, in my opinion, really that accurate, is this new myth, fairly new myth, that's been on the internet, that the Double Fantasy album by John and Yoko was largely a fraud, with them trying to portray themselves as the Romeo and Juliet of the 20th century. And a lot of this I heard even from, I don't want to mention names, Fred Seaman, and some other. Did I mention a name? No, but that's where a lot of it started from, and he was there, with John as his assistant and everything. But did he listen to the album? Because my argument about that is that there are songs on the album that make it clear that they're struggling and having some problems. Now, I know that before I get to that, of course, John and Yoko, we know they did their, we might call self-indulgent film, 71 or 72, the Imagine film of the album, really, where that's kind of them, playing it up self-indulgently and stuff like that. But, I mean, we know that in 73, 4, they split. They didn't have a perfect marriage. They made it. They couldn't help but have it public that they were apart and having their difficulties. And then on the Double Fantasy album itself, I have some songs here, like "I'm Losing You," of course, with John saying lines like, "I feel you slipping away. I know I hurt you then, but hell, that was way back when. Do you still have to carry that cross? Ain't no doubt about it. I'm losing you." He's having difficulties there with the relationship. And Yoko, of course, the response, which I love, maybe one of my, I always say one of my, being kind, maybe my favorite song, okay? I said it on the album. I'm moving on. I don't know what it is. I remember the first time I heard that on the radio, I turned it on. I never heard anything from Double Fantasy in 1980. They were just playing it on the radio. And I caught the end of John's "I'm losing you," and then it did that kind of segue into "I'm moving on." I thought this is so great, and she say, "I'm moving on. We're getting phony. It's getting phony." Like the whole thing, not exactly that thrilled, even in the song "Just Like Starting Over," it's a hankering. Say, it's been so long since we took the time, and it's like, but when I see you, darling, it's like we both are falling in love again. It'll be just like starting over. And lines like, like we used to in the early days. I mean, this doesn't sound like, they're 100% thrilled all the time. Like they're trying to portray themselves as this always happy, perfect couple, which is a lot of the myth that I seem to hear, that, this was a fake album. And I don't think John personally really did that anyway. I think he wore his heart on his sleeve. If he was miserable, he'll tell you, straight how miserable he was. If he's happy, he'll tell you that too. But that's basically what I'm saying with this particular subject. Not so much that I'm saying that they put on a show for the public, trying to disclaim that. I'm just saying the album itself, I don't believe, was made to look like this perfect marriage. I think in interviews, John said, I think in one of the last interviews, I keep getting the RKO interview mixed up with BBC interview with Andy Peebles. But he said, we have to work on this. It's like a plant. You have to water it, keep the flies off, nurture it. A relationship like this, I don't see any pretense that everything's hunky dory 1,000% of the time. But that's a lot of the stuff that I read on the internet of late. People seem to think that they were just a couple of phonies, just trying to make it look like they were so perfect and in love all the time. Maybe in the earlier days, maybe the Imagine. I don't know what to call it, Imagine film. I don't want to get it mixed up with the Andrew Salt documentary,
Right.
but you know the one I mean.
Yeah.
The album. So that's my top one that I have for tonight.
Yeah, just saying there's some comments here that people are leaving, saying that Yoko was having an affair and she was going to leave him and they were going to divorce. I mean,
that's another myth.
Yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows?
Sam Havertoy.
Yeah, exactly. You hear that stuff, and May Pang that John was still seeing her, and yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's one myth. I don't think
she wants to believe that
be able to bust exactly. But I completely agree with you, Joe. I think if you really listen to that album, it's not all sunshine and unicorn.
Yeah. And that's a pretty good trick too for Yoko to evade all mass photography and paparazzi with Sam for 40 years. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Some really good points you made there, Joe. This brutal honesty on Double Fantasy from both John and Yoko.
Yeah.
And you can talk all you want about John's life and what might have happened. All that we do know is this is what happened at the end. And John chose to be with Yoko. He chose to make that album. We know that he had plans of releasing Milk and Honey and going on tour with Yoko. That's all that we know. But that's the truth. We can't really, you can listen to other people who are insiders. You don't know if they have any motive behind what they're saying, but John chose to do what he wanted to do. He was his own man. And he presented him and Yoko as a couple. And that's where he wanted to be at that point in his life. Who knows what might have happened years later? He might have made solo albums without Yoko.
Yeah, we don't know.
Together. We don't know. None of us knows. It's all speculation.
And maybe she was getting rid of. To be fair, I mean, I don't know for sure. Maybe she was thinking about as I'm moving on, and she wanted to end it with John. I don't know. Split up. I don't know. Speculation. Plenty of that around.
And that's a really good point you made, Ken, about the ulterior motives, because that is something that is hard to determine when you read different accounts. That
spite, access to grind,
right,
like that.
exactly. And so who do you, not to sound paranoid, but who do you trust? I mean, it's really hard.
Yeah. Okay, Tom, how about you next?
Yeah, cool. Well, let's continue with John and Yoko, if we will. we know that they had their 18-month separation, John's lost weekend, if you will. And some of the books that I've read in the past, starting with this one, this was the very first Beatles related book I've ever owned. I remember seeing the movie and whatnot in the theaters. And the myth that I want to talk about is how they got back together, because a lot of it is pretty much just this painted picture where you see the photography or the photo of them. They're backstage at the Elton John concert, and then all of a sudden, a couple weeks or months later, they're living together again, and that's not necessarily true. So, and then another book goes a little farther.
He moved back. I'm sorry, he moved back with Yoko in January, I think, of '75. Right.
So, but still, he had to work on it, getting back and start, regain her trust and everything. But and this Golden book talks about a little bit more about how he would go to her place and send her flowers, and read her lyrics of songs that he wrote, like something like he went over to Dakota and read her the song "Bless You," and they had a really nice moment together. And and Yoko had said that she almost gave up and gave in and let him in back then, but no, she wanted him to continue working on that. So, but the part that isn't known is the part that Paul McCartney takes, in the fact that it was Paul that had the visit with, or Yoko went to go visit Paul and Linda in London, and they talked about their issues, and Paul offered his assistance to Yoko. Hey, do you want me to go see John, see if I can do anything for you, and get him on the right track again? And that's what he did. He confronted John, had a private conversation, and Paul told him to get his head out of his ass and get back to the to the woman that you say that you're in love with, and you continuing to write these songs about, even though they're separated at the time. And so he finally did it. And then it's something that Yoko didn't, I don't think she admitted to until I think 2010 during John's 70th birthday celebration. I think that's when she finally came forward and admitted that it was Paul who was influential in those two getting back together.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if I may, John, I would think John would jump at the chance. I thought it was Yoko was the one, you're not ready, she was the one.
Well, she wanted him to more or less, kiss her butt for a while, and get the flowers.
Kiss.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
And that's fine. And and that's what he did. I mean, he did the work. He put the work into it, and he proved that he still loved her and was very much in love with her. So kudos to Lennon for doing that. And kudos for Paul for stepping in and helping his old friend out.
Okay. Some very good points being made here. But we all know that when John was away from Yoko, even though he was extremely active musically, very productive, but at the same time, he could have been miserable being away from Yoko. And you hear so many accounts of that.
Right.
That's what I said.
I do think it's somewhat of a myth that he was drunk all the time, which sometimes gets portrayed, because, and this is also May Pang's words, which I tend to believe in this regard, you can't be drunk all the time and produce all that John did. Whether it's Walls and Bridges, rock and roll, even though there's a bootleg of John being drunk in the studio during rock and roll, working
Carly
with Ringo.
Simon.
Yeah. Working with Carly Simon.
About Carly Simon. Something.
David Bowie, Elton John, Harry Nilsson.
Yeah.
You can't do all that work and be drunk all the time. So he could still be productive while being unhappy for the most part.
Yeah.
So, but it was evidently important for him to get back with Yoko, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
So, all right, Kit, how about you next?
Well, I'll tell you, we'll stay with John. Roy, he's poor John. He was a victim of a lot of these myths going around. But there's, one thing that really grinds my gears are Misattributed quotes. You see them on, I mean, of course, it's nothing new, but on Facebook and social media, it's just worse because, somebody will post a photo of a, picture of the person and then this beautiful quote next to them, and it all looks so official and,
Right.
and half the time it's not true at all. And one of the quotes, I have seen this so many times, is this quote that John supposedly said. When I was 5 years old, my mother always told me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them they didn't understand life. Now, that's a nice quote. I mean, I thought, but I haven't found a shred of evidence that ever said that. And that just, you see things like that, and I have a feeling another quote is going to turn up in this episode that misattributed or misunderstood. But I just think it's so important to research these things, look it up. That certainly is nothing inflammatory or anything, but I have seen this passed around for years, years. And I mean, there is zero evidence that he ever said it. So, it just shows you have to do your homework, and don't automatically think that just because the quote appears on, with a nice photo and a beautiful thing on Facebook that it's true.
Although I do like that. I like that quote.
It's a beautiful quote.
That one.
Absolutely. But when you read it, you just think, does that really sound like something John said? I know he did say, and I think we all talked about this before, he did say something like, I was a genius and people didn't recognize it.
Yeah, he said that.
Yeah. And that's been documented. I mean, that I believe. That's fine. But my friend Karen said, but isn't everything on the internet true? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Of course.
Now, I think one of you guys wanted to bring up the quote from John that always gets spread around. Was Ringo a good drummer?
Oh, yes.
But John apparently said he wasn't even the best drummer in the Beatles. And that's been proven to be false.
Right.
I don't remember who actually said it, but it was a comedian in the past.
Yeah,
and
Jasper Carrot.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
I think Mark Lewison uncovered that. If I'm not mistaken, he helped with that. It was a quote in the London Times or something about that. Supposedly John said that, and he was looking around and said, because Mark, let's face it, he's the master historian, and if there's a source, he's heard everything, or read everything.
Right.
He hadn't come across it anywhere, and I thought that I had read it. Maybe somebody can ask him next time, speak to him. I'm pretty sure that he helped uncover that several years ago. This comes from this comedian Jasper Carrot. Who actually, I'm reading some notes here that I took, confirmed that he wrote the line.
Okay.
It's a clever line. You could see John's wit saying it, but he didn't say it. He had nothing but respect for Ringo. I mean, he always had respect for Ringo's drumming.
There are certain quotes that you read on Facebook or whatever, and they sound like something John could have said. If you know John's wit, and you could believe it. But not everybody that posts these things just do the research.
Well, and the reason why you think something like that might be true is because of how highly John speaks of Paul as a musician throughout, his living years. From say 62 up to 80. I mean, he could be very negative about Paul, but he can also be very positive, about Paul as a musician.
Yeah,
he defended Paul's bass playing too.
Yeah.
Yes.
He said it's underrated. Ringo's drumming and Paul's bass playing.
Right.
The Beatles tend to take the approach that they can be critical of each other, but if you're critical, if someone else is critical of them, then they defend each other.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I like that. Yes.
Yeah. So,
right,
is there
Ken,
another
what
one
do
you
you
want to
got?
bring up? Okay, I want to bring up a couple on Ringo, and I think I'm going to get a lot of heat on this.
Uh-oh. Get ready, everybody.
It has to do with Ringo's first two big hits. in his
Wow.
solo career. It Don't Come Easy and Back Off Boogaloo. Now, with It Don't Come Easy, this was a major hit, top 10 hit in the US, top 10 hit many parts of the world. When the record came out, it was listed as being written by Richard Starkey, solely by Ringo. And several years back now, there was a bootleg that came out with George singing the lead vocal, doing a guide vocal. And ever since then, people have put together that George wrote the song.
Mm.
Now, there's no doubt about it. George has his fingerprints on this record. He produced it, he played guitar on it, did the lead guitar solo on it. But Ringo has said in recent years that they co wrote the song together. And he said on stage that Ringo, wrote most of the song, and George wrote a verse and a bridge. So that's still a significant part of the song. But there
Mhm.
are people now spreading it on the internet that George wrote the song. And in fact, I was listening about a year ago to the radio. There was an oldie show on. It's a syndicated radio show that had a few hundred stations that broadcast it. The DJ played it Don't Come Easy, came out of it and said, for many years it was written that that song was written completely by Ringo, when in fact it was written by George Harrison.
Mm.
Not George and Ringo,
Right.
just George Harrison.
Yep.
So it's exploded into this myth that it's completely George's song, and or that George wrote most of the song. But you know something, folks, when it comes to the Beatles, not that everything that they've said is going to be accurate. They're human like the rest of us. I don't expect them to remember everything that happened in their history day by day, what happened. That's why you have the Mark Lewisons of this world or Ken Womack that do the research on that. But when it comes to their own songs, especially their own compositions, I trust what they have to say. And on this point, I also want to make this comparison here. When you think about all the songs that are Lennon McCartney songs, there are over 200 of those. And not only are there so many, they wrote them in a fairly short period of time. And yet, if you were to take a look at what John and Paul said about the songs they wrote together, they hardly ever contradict each other, except for Eleanor Rigby and In My Life.
Mhm.
You had John's comments in Playboy. You had Many Years From Now, the book from Paul. There's hardly any time when they dispute each other. That's extraordinary. In Ringo, before It Don't Come Easy, he only had Don't Pass Me By and Octopus's Garden as songs that he wrote. You'd think he would remember everything about It Don't Come Easy. He doesn't have this backlog to remember. So I would trust Ringo's judgment on this.
Yeah. I
And,
mean, go
like
ahead.
I'm saying, George's contribution was very significant to It Don't Come Easy. There's no doubt about it. But who are you going to believe? The actual artist who made the record or a fan who thinks otherwise or goes
Yeah.
by their gut reaction?
Yeah,
You know?
I mean,
Right.
after all this time, George and Ringo were so close that I don't think Ringo would have any problem admitting that, after years and years or whatnot, that yeah, it was George that wrote this song, and he
Hmm.
just gave me the credit, because as a gift or because it was my first solo single or second or whatever. So I mean, if that was the case, I could believe that, but I mean, he is still pretty standing firm on the fact that that is his song.
Yeah.
Mm.
And, George never complained about the fact that it went out as being solely a Ringo Starr
Yeah.
composition. It was evidently the two of them made an agreement, and it didn't matter to George whether he got a co-write or not. And then probably that way, Ringo would make more money off the record. He would get a songwriting royalty as well as making money off the sales of the record. Okay? That was an agreement. Just like John and Paul made an agreement for
Right.
Lennon McCartney songs. There are
Yeah.
songs written entirely by John that Paul has part credit for. Songs that Paul wrote entirely that John has credit for. But, there are some fans that are actually saying on the internet that it's definitely George's song. It's George's gift to Ringo,
Mm.
you know? And part of the reason, like I said, is because, Ringo only had a couple songs before that. Could he possibly write a song this good as It Don't Come Easy? But, Ringo has consistently been talking about this. And he's also said, and this is another thing that he says consistently throughout his career, he's good at starting songs when he
Right.
writes them. He needs help finishing them. So
Mhm.
George helped finish it. But at the same time, no doubt about it, George's sound is all over the record. You got to give George a lot of credit. But as a composition, it's mainly Ringo's song. Good point from Marvin G. Octopus's Garden
Yes.
was also written by Ringo with George's help. It's believed that George did help write the song. How much? We don't know.
Yep.
That was, I'll tell
Okay.
you, that was a good team there at the early 70s. It's too bad that that hit making potential didn't continue throughout the 70s and 80s, because
Yes.
between Ringo's singing and the lyrics and George's guitar playing, I mean, those are some great catchy songs.
Yeah.
This might be a
look
good
at
time to.
Photograph.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just
Look at
going to mention Photograph. That's what I was going to say. Is it credited as
Starkey
both
and
of them?
Harrison.
Maybe you've seen this interview. I don't know. It's not one I've seen very often, but I know I have it. It's with Ringo. I want to say it's from '76 when he's promoting Rotogravure. It's in the back. It looks like a backyard or something, and he's holding up the artwork that's going to be the cover of, I think, Rotogravure. And whoever the interviewer is, you don't see him on camera. He's kind of calling some of the earlier stuff up to that point kind of schmaltzy. And Ringo says, well, this new album is going to be more schmaltz that you won't like, or something like that. But I remember him saying, I don't know how Photograph came up or something, but he says, and Ringo was like, man, that's the best song I ever wrote. What are you talking about? That's a great song. The best song I ever wrote. I remember him saying that, in that particular, I don't know if anybody's seen it. I have it on a compilation video of different Ringo stuff. And I remember him saying that, and he almost like he said that I ever wrote, even though obviously written with George, but loosely he said that. I mean, he's just speaking loosely. He doesn't mean literally I wrote the song.
Right.
But I remember him saying that. Don't slag all that off, man. That's the greatest song I ever wrote. He's like stroking his beard.
Harry Benson, one of our viewers, wrote in with, didn't George sue Ringo over a song?
Yeah.
And
It
yes,
was a mix.
Yes.
it was the song I'll Still Love You, which is
Right.
on Ringo's Rotogravure. And I don't know what the problem was, why George...
I
It was
think
a mix.
it was the mix. I think
He
that's
said
what
that.
it was.
They talked about that on the that great show that everybody really should see, the Aspel. Aspel and Company show in 1988 when George and Ringo both appeared. If you haven't seen that, I'm telling you, it's one of the best moments in all Beatles history.
Yeah.
George and
It's
Ringo
on
together as
YouTube.
guests.
Yeah. It's on YouTube, so you can find it there.
Okay, so George didn't like the mix on that song.
Yes,
Correct.
apparently that's what they were. They had a good-natured laugh about it in retrospect. They were most embarrassed, laughing embarrassingly together. As friends.
Seems strange.
He sued me. He didn't like the mix.
One of our astute viewers here, Greg Swan, said
Uh-oh.
I think the interview we were talking about with Ringo was on the Australian TV show
Oh,
Flashes or something
okay.
in LA, June '76.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Greg.
Greg. Thank you.
Yep, we have smart
Thank you, Greg.
viewers and listeners.
We're learning from you guys, too.
That's
Yeah.
for sure.
The other Ringo song I wanted to bring up was Back Off Boogaloo. Because
And we've gotten a lot of questions about that. Here, so
Yeah.
Definitely.
there's not much to say about it, but even when I started out doing Beatles shows in the 80s, there were books that came out that said the song was about Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
For one line.
well,
Yeah.
actually a couple of lines in a way,
Well,
because
What's the
get
other one?
yourself together now and
Now
give me something tasty.
tasty.
Everything you try to do, it sure sounds wasted.
Oh, that's
That
good.
was like the critics at the time being super critical of Paul, saying that his music was very lightweight, it was fluff, it didn't go anywhere, not enough effort being put behind it. And then there's the wake up meathead, don't pretend that you were dead, alluding to the Paul is dead rumor. But my point is in this that Ringo has never said the song was about Paul.
Right.
You can believe it all you want. You can say, I interpret it as being about Paul, but you can't say it as a fact.
Right.
And the other thing that I want to bring up about this is that I don't think Ringo would ever write lyrics like that are so obvious about his friend.
Yeah.
When we did our show the last time talking about our favorite song lyrics that I brought up early 1970, there's a line in there because each verse he's talking about each of the Beatles. He says about Paul, "I wonder if he'll play with me."
Right.
That's Ringo. That's tongue in cheek. It's not, attacking his friend and making it so obvious. I don't think that Ringo would do that. Now, it is possible. I can't swear that it's not
Right.
about Paul, but it's unsubstantiated. You can't say it as a fact.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what he said was on the VH1 Storytellers. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've seen that.
Yeah.
He talks about, Mark Bolan used to say that kind
Right.
of thing all the time. Boogaloo, boogaloo, back
Boogaloo,
off,
right.
or whatever.
That's
or
where he
something
got
like that.
the. That's where he got the
The
title.
word,
of the song.
yeah. And I mean, like Ken said, I mean, do we know for a fact? No, but I mean, I tend to think, and I think you might agree, that a lot of times the fans put too much into that. They want a lot of these songs to be about the other Beatles. They think,
Oh, yes.
the Beatles are thinking of ex-Beatles are thinking of the others all the time and writing about them all the time. Do you think this is about Paul? You think this is about George? I think he meant Ringo when he was doing this song.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think in your dreams, I think, but I don't think all the time it was open messages to the other Beatles all the time, like they went around 24/7 rehashing old school days all the time.
Some fans must think that the only relationships that the Beatles have are with each other.
Each other.
And the only
Yeah,
people
right,
they
that's
write
right.
about are each other. And I got to tell you, here's a case in point. When the song "Tug of War" came out, I actually thought Paul was writing a bit about John there.
Mm.
What with one thing and
Okay.
another, we were trying to outscore each other in a tug of war. The competitiveness between the two of them, I might believe it, but I'm sure not going to say it's a fact. I'm
Right.
not going to
Right.
present it as a fact.
Right.
Right.
There's songs like that where you think, like I will tell you, writing to Vanity Fair, I
Mhm.
strongly believe
Right.
is about Heather Mills. But unless
I think
Paul
so.
actually says it, you can't really say for sure
Yeah.
that it was. But I
Right.
truly believe that it was,
Mhm.
you know. And
That's
then,
another. No, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, we can talk about Three Legs,
Yeah.
which has been written up as Paul writing about the other Beatles. He's never said it was.
Right.
Right.
But all of a
Mhm.
sudden, it gets this reputation as being an attack on the other Beatles. And that's also because it happened during that Ram and Imagine period where John and Paul were writing to each other somewhat, and
Yeah.
John thought a lot of what Paul wrote was about him. And it's only in recent years that he even admitted that Too Many People
Yeah.
was directed towards
Yeah,
him and Yoko.
Mhm.
But John also thought that Dear Boy was
Dear
written
boy.
about him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Paul said that it was about Linda's first husband.
Mhm.
Right.
That you never know, dear boy, how much you missed.
Yeah.
Don't you see what a great catch you have here? You're missing out on it. You're losing out on it. That's who that song was directed towards. It wasn't about John.
Right.
But
There's another story out there about that where Linda first approached John first as, maybe a romantic, affair or whatnot. So that's why the lyric, I guess you never knew, dear boy, what you had found or what you had missed.
Yes.
No.
Something like that, as maybe a dit,
Because I've seen interviews where Linda says she liked John, and Paul says you
Yes.
like John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there could
That's-
be some truth to that.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
still,
Yeah.
Three Legs.
Yeah.
Where is their proof?
Yep.
Right.
No.
Exactly.
Paul never said it. When the artist never admits it, or the musicians that work with him never admit it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Speculation, and sometimes I want to go back on what I said a little bit because at times it can be. Maybe I'm sure there are times where some of them are not thinking it's about their friends, the Beatles, and but I just don't think every time. I hear this about some of the wildest songs. I just think, wasn't "Friends to Go" something to do with George though?
No, what it was he wrote that in the style of George, and he
Style
said
of George.
he always said that this is a song that George could have wrote.
Could have.
Oh,
Here I go.
He said he was channeling George
Yeah.
Mm,
okay.
for
okay.
that song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And Paul did say, "Dear friend" is about John,
Mm-hmm.
but not
Yes.
"dear boy."
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Mhm.
song we were
ears
singing. The song we were singing. Not
Yes.
only a great song, but great book. I
Well,
forget who
thank
It's a
wrote
you.
it.
good book title.
That's
But yeah.
about John.
Mhm. Well,
Okay.
and I apologize. There was a commenter who said this earlier, and there are too many here to scroll down, but I'll just paraphrase it. That that after John came out with "How Do You Sleep,"
Hmm.
I think, and I agree. I think people then started reading into these lyrics because, of course, "How Do You Sleep" was obviously
Right.
and by the way, as depressing as that is, that's a great song. I mean, the lyrics are just
I like this song.
that's
It's
some
a
of the
great
best.
put down song. It is.
It
I
is
mean, I
some
feel
of the
bad because
best
it's
put downs I've ever seen.
we
It's
love Paul, but then I like when he try to cover it up. Oh, I'm attacking myself, really. When I
right.
listen to
Mhm.
later on, and he's saying, some show he said, well, if I can't have a fight with my best friend, I don't know who I
Right.
can have a fight with. That's I like stuff like that. He's trying to make it nicer. But while you brought "How Do You Sleep" up, I might as well throw this in there quickly. I don't know if this is true. Another myth that I hear a lot is that Ringo was going to do some work on "How Do You Sleep," and supposedly he heard all the lyrics and he kept saying,
Yeah,
"All
he
right,
told
John,
us that
that's
that's
enough,"
enough. Yeah, I've heard that.
and it walked out. I don't think that's ever been really. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's been substantiated anywhere. But that's now gospel also. That Ringo was like, "Enough,
Okay.
John."
Yeah,
Mhm.
I've heard that
Hmm.
as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So these are
Yeah.
all good myths
Yeah.
here
I mean, there's a
that
Yeah.
we're
new one too
tackling.
that we can debunk now because thanks to that tape that that re-entered our lives.
Oh yeah.
We've got the we can put the Ringo quote from the anthology. The rest now. Oh, this was our last track, our last take, our last song.
Hmm.
We now know that John wanted to do another album. After Abbey Road. So
Yeah, but you
Yeah,
also
as
know
of that moment.
yeah,
Yes.
at that moment.
precisely.
But
John could
it's
change his tune.
documented. It's documented.
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's the important part that he did say it.
Yeah. And then now we're hearing that once John did the live piece in Toronto show,
Yeah.
all of a
yes,
sudden he said, "Well, I'm really enjoying the fact that I can have a band of my own here where I can be the leader.
Yeah.
I don't have to answer anybody else." And that was an influence in the decision of the
Absolutely.
Beatles
yes.
breaking up. But
Absolutely.
the whole Beatle breakup is so complicated.
It
Yeah.
sure is.
And that's what makes it all fascinating.
Yeah.
And for anyone to pinpoint one reason why the Beatles broke up, although I'm sure that just about everybody watching will probably say it was Alan Klein, or it could be, it's all of those
Oh,
things all rolled up into one.
Combination
yeah,
factor.
exactly.
Perfect storm.
But
Yeah.
it's
And they were grown up. They were matured, and they were other things in their lives were coming now. It wasn't just the one goal of the Beatles so much anymore.
Right.
It was a whole
They
bunch of
grow up.
things.
Yeah.
once you study 1969 in particular, so many things happened to them in that year, between John and Yoko getting married, Paul and Linda getting married, Apple, all the problems they had with their company, how to resolve that, doing solo projects, and
Could
just
you
the whole
imagine being a hired historian in 1965 for the? I'm sorry, 1969 for the Beatles. You would never get any sleep. You would be constantly, jotting stuff down and following them nonstop. It would be you need four of them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that fans want such a simple explanation to it all, and it's just not.
Oh,
You're
Right.
dealing with four grown men who are very similar in some ways and very different in a lot of ways. And they all had different desires at that time.
Mhm.
And, their lives were changing rapidly. And, part of the reason why the Beatles are so fascinating is because it's so complicated. The Beatles story is just as fascinating and compelling as the music sometimes. And that's why a lot of books are coming out now about Abbey Road and about 1969. And no doubt there'll be more,
Yep.
and more things will be uncovered. So, we just keep on learning as much as we can and trying to understand,
Yeah.
Yep.
realizing that we'll never know everything there is
No.
to know about the Beatles.
Too many
The
pieces.
biggest, yes, yeah. Anything else you guys want to add?
The real quick, the one Paul just can't seem to get rid of. We weren't coming to America without a number one.
Yeah.
It's just they were booked in November, I believe it was, to come to America, and I don't think I Want to Hold Your Hand was released until December. I believe
The end of
in
December.
America. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then just coincidence or fate, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. I mean, it was number one when they arrived, so it does make for a good story, but it's just not accurate.
The problem I have with that is that anytime Paul has said that, no one has ever challenged him on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wonder, just trying to give Paul the benefit of the doubt here, when he said we wouldn't come to America without a number one, could he possibly have meant we wouldn't have done our first tour there? Because they didn't tour until the summertime. And by then, they'd already had number ones.
Right.
Maybe that he never said we wouldn't come on Ed Sullivan,
Right.
until we had a number one. He didn't say that. He just said we wouldn't come to America.
He's just
So,
America.
I'm not totally sure what Paul meant by that, but I remember talking about this in the '80s on my radio show. How could Paul say such a thing?
But wait, you'll have to ask about that when you talk to him, Ken. Definitely.
Yeah.
You have
Okay.
to nail him.
Can you arrange that for me, Joe?
Oh, no, I was hoping you could arrange it for me, though.
Just showing here,
Okay.
we have Corey Johnson. His first Talk More Talk live viewing. So
Hey,
hello.
Corey. Hi, Corey.
Hi, Corey.
Good.
Thank you for taking the time.
Yes.
Any more myths? I've got
yeah.
another one I could
There's
bring up.
lots of them. There's lots of them.
Yeah. I wonder
Well,
if
we
we
could.
should save them for part 2, or sometime along.
I mean, here we are with another series on our hand.
I think we've got another series.
Yeah.
You can create a podcast just on this.
Yes.
alone.
Yeah, that's for
Myth
sure.
busting.
That's
Because
right.
you're dealing with 60 plus years of history.
Exactly. Yeah.
There are bound to be inaccuracies out there. There will always be inaccuracies, but and things that are said that haven't been proven. So that's what we're tackling here on the show tonight.
How about the Saturday Night Live one that I've got in my back pocket, real quick? You know the Lorne Michaels routine on Saturday Night Live. Hey, Beatles, if you're watching, come on down. We'll give you such and such amount of money, less to Ringo. If you want to give him less, it's up to you. Whatever.
$3,000.
John and Paul were, in fact, that's not the myth, because they were, in fact, watching that show at the Dakota, because both Paul and John confirmed that.
Mm-hmm.
But the myth to me is, I've heard stories that, they were ready to go and they got in the cab, but the cab driver couldn't find the address. And if you watch the movie Two of Us, of course they stick Yoko again as the B word, who they're ready to go. They grab their guitars, they're hopping, they're there, and then Yoko calls up and she's on the phone and John just curls into a fetus and all of a sudden my mother's on the phone and I'm not going down there. Baloney.
Uh-huh.
They said they looked at each other and they thought, just for a split second, they thought maybe, and I think I know Ken Womack even brought this up a little bit, talking to him on the side, said that I think the wives were there too, Linda and Yoko were there, and the kids.
I think Linda was there. Yeah, I don't know about
the kids. But what if it was true or not? I mean, all I know is one thing. One of them said, John or Paul. The fact is, we were just too tired. Really, must have been. It could have been Paul. I don't know. But I remember Paul going like this for a split second. We thought,
And just because he said that and John said that, make a movie out of it.
I like that as a what if scenario. I don't mind. I don't mind some what ifs. Like that works, except for the ending. That then the ending with that becomes not a what if scenario, but it becomes like they're talking about a specific historical point, but something that happened, and they're rewriting it.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Okay. Any last ones we want to get in? Or
Kit, you want to get one more in?
Well, I'll just this is another one that could be another show, so I'm just going to briefly mention it. That if I had $1 for every time somebody told me Michael Jackson stole the Beatles catalog from Paul, I'd be very rich. And it's
Didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times. it was. I mean, I'm not going to go through the whole story on this episode. That'd be for a future one. But no, basically, it was that Paul had the opportunity in '85, I think it was, to buy it. And there are some stories that have been not 100% substantiated that he and Yoko talked about going in on it together, and and Yoko said, I think we can bargain them down a bit. Now, meanwhile, Michael, being an astute businessman here, said, I'll pay whatever it is. And his lawyer said he did contact Paul and Yoko and said, are you guys going to bid? And they said no. And
I could never understand that.
Yeah,
I think
don't know.
I think that story is in the Doggett book. You Never Give Me Your Money, which I think you just got there, Joe.
I just got a copy of that.
I think it's a good read. I think you might like it.
Absolutely. And so I mean, I can't imagine why they ever thought that this could be bargained down. I mean, this is the Beatles catalog. This is the the Rolls Royce.
And it's amongst the two of them. It's Yoko and Paul together.
Yeah, I think Paul felt like it was his music, and he shouldn't have had to have paid all that money.
He did, but they signed that deal.
Well, look at the alternative.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So
Michael gets it.
And so Michael said, "I'll pay whatever." So I think he paid like $47 million. Now, on a friendship level, was that the nicest thing to do? No, but I mean, he got it fair and square. I mean, he bought it, and yes, I know Paul advised him to go into music publishing and all that.
I'm going to buy your songs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist.
Yes, no, it's true though. I mean, that's exactly what happened. But that's the thing. Yeah, Michael didn't steal the catalog. I mean, he bought it fair and square, as I said. Whether you on a friendship level, that was a great thing. That's you can debate that, but and hopefully I guess Paul is working to get them back, buy them back, and it's all kind of hush hush from last time.
Right, it's confidential.
What the deal is, but yeah. So I'm glad I can get this off my chest, because I can't tell you truly every time he stole the catalog from Paul. No.
Okay. All right. That's a strong one to end with right there. And we're going to have to do this again because there's plenty more myths to bust. And this has been a great show. Why don't we each give each other our contact information? If I can still talk, losing my voice. And this is called Talk More Talk.
Joe, there's a big announcement that's coming up. So.
Oh, that's true. Tom,
yeah, I wanted to know about that actually. Who starts? Me?
You do.
You said.
Joe.
Okay. No. Well, I do a show called Talk More Talk, where occasionally I am a pinch hitting co-host. I got 2 credits now. I got that, and also I just have a YouTube channel, and there it is, Mean Mr. Mayo, and I do all kinds of stuff on there. I just did 3 videos where I got a lot of interesting Beatles and solo Beatles pieces of memorabilia that you might want to look at, and occasional interviews, topics. I did some controversial ones about John Lennon, noticing that it seems to me that he pinched a lot of songs a lot more maybe than Paul, and that was getting a lot of controversy. Also, depending on how you feel about spiritual things, I think on the 8th day God created the Beatles. That's another video that I did. You might want to check out. So there's a lot of fun stuff. And sometimes when I'm not doing Beatles or solo Beatles, I'm ranting. I'm doing rant videos about things that really grind my gears.
Yeah, the truck rant was pretty spectacular.
Those things, those gigantic. I mean, you drive a car, not a tank. And that's it. That's me.
All right, Kit, you're next.
Okay, well, as I mentioned, I'm going to be at the conference this weekend, so hope to see some of you there. I also was recently on another podcast Tomorrow Never Knows, co-hosted by Bob Wilson and Warren Brown. Hopefully they're still watching. And I have to thank Warren because he sent me. I hope you guys can see it. Oh, there we go.
Hey, where's mine?
Mug, check it out. My books and everything. So Warren Brown, great artist. Go over to his page, Warren Brown's art page on Facebook, and he's got some great stuff. And my columns will be back as soon as I get back from this conference. It's I've just been focusing full time on that. So that, as always, you can go to my website, kidotool.com, follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and you'll be updated on all the stuff that I'm doing.
Okay. Tom, you have a huge announcement.
Yeah.
Everybody's waiting for it.
Yeah. Well, just want to say, a couple months ago, my cousin who I do the show with, David Gargalino, Two Legs.
Yeah.
He announced that he wanted a divorce. So I went into a 2-month drunken little powwow and
didn't shave
every day. And but anyways, he announced that he wanted to leave Two Legs, which he's my cousin is a very busy guy, has a lot of hobbies, and he just is always doing something. So I respect his wishes to want to leave the show, and I want to thank him for 3 seasons of just having a lot of fun with him. I knew him as a child, but as families do, we kind of grow apart. So I was able to reconnect with David in 2009 at my wedding, and then ever since then we probably haven't gone more than 3 days in a row without texting each other. It's nonstop. It's just it was a great pleasure to do the show with him. So I was debating on whether or not to continue or not. And, I was asking around if other people wanted to be a part of the show. And then I finally did find, a great gentleman who decided that, he wanted to come on board, and his name is, drum roll please, his name is Andy Nichols, and he's a big fan of this show, and he's a fan of Two Legs, so I'm really proud to have him aboard on the Two Legs staff. He's got a title that's really impressive. He's one of 75 people that holds this Masters of the Beatles, popular music and society. Once again, only 75 people have this title, and he went to Liverpool to get this, and he's a smart guy. I'm looking forward to doing many shows with him, and it's going to be fun. And one other little announcement, if I can make too, a musician friend of mine who I got to see him perform, his name is Dylan Seavey, and he plays with a gentleman named Ron Gallo, who's a really great musician as well, younger musician, and he is going to be doing some intro and outro work for us as well. He's going to be doing some drumming stylings of Paul McCartney, which I can't wait to hear what he comes up with. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. So we're making some changes, and we're going to sing the changes. We're looking for changes, all that changes stuff. And it's sad because I'm not doing the show with my cousin anymore, but I'm looking forward to what the hope for the future. It's going to be great.
I wish you good luck. Good luck,
Yes.
Tom.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm
And
looking
I was
forward
wrong
to.
on all my guesses, so yeah.
So was I.
Yeah.
We were all wrong.
Right.
Congratulations. I know that David's a great guy.
Oh,
and
he is.
that-
Yeah.
too.
I had a lot of fun
Yeah.
with it. Yep.
All right. As for me, you can get in touch with me at my email address, which is everylittlething@att.net. I also have a Facebook page for Ken Michaels. You can be a friend of mine. And I have my syndicated Beatles show, Every Little Thing, which is on 39 radio stations. There's a show every single week. And if you want to know where you can find it, on my website, kenmichaelsradio.com, there is a page for Every Little Thing, which lists all the radio stations that carry it with links to their websites and their broadcast times. I also have a trivia page. Every single week, I give away great prizes. You can win one of 9 prizes, either books, CDs, or DVDs. Kit's book, Songs We Were Singing, is a fixture there on that page, and probably always will be.
How many radio stations did you say your show was on, Ken?
39.
You're not saying no winners have taken it yet, have you? I'm just kidding. I have the book. It's a great book. I got it. I have it.
Yeah.
So is it the same show for all 39 channels or stations, or do you do 39 different shows for each station?
I love the Beatles, but that's going a little bit too far. Actually, there's over 120 shows that I've produced.
Wow.
They're all different.
Wow.
Anytime any radio station signs up for the show, they have access to all the shows.
Oh, okay.
So you could be listening to all 39 stations, and all 39 could be running different shows.
Yeah.
But when I do have a new show produced, which is usually every other week or every 3 weeks,
Mhm.
a lot of those stations run it at once.
Oh, cool.
If they want any new shows that have new product in it, whether it's What's My Name or
Mhm.
whether it's something from the Abbey Road box set, then they have to run the newest show for
Yeah.
something like that.
Right.
So yeah, but that's there on my website, and the trivia is there too. So that's kenmichaelsradio.com. My other Beatles show, talk show, podcast, Things We Said Today, which I co-host with Darren DeVivo and Alan Kozin, that's available on Podbean and YouTube and iTunes, just like us. And
Yep.
we just recorded a show before this show was recorded.
Marathon
Monday.
man over here.
Monday's
Wow.
a busy day for me. And it's not going to be posted until Friday,
Mm.
which by sheer coincidence is the same day of the Abbey Road box set.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's about the Abbey Road box set.
Right.
Okay.
Hint, hint. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
sure a special
So-
journalist that you have on the show might have had early access to the music.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, fair enough. just a thought. You know.
So we might say a few things about Abbey Road in the new show, but it won't be posted until Friday. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay.
Very cool. Very
This
cool.
has been a great show and a great theme for the show, and I can't wait to do more of them. You know.
Yep.
Do you think we can talk for another hour so I can not fall asleep? Because I want to make sure I see Paul in an hour, and I'm afraid I'm going to conk out before then. So, want to stay on for another hour?
Sure. no
Okay.
problem.
I could.
Uh,
I don't know if
You're
our
gonna- you're-
viewers want that, but you know.
Yeah.
You're gonna go live right after this, probably, aren't you, Joe?
oh, I didn't think of that. Hey, that's a way to stay awake. I didn't even think of that.
Mhm.
But I might fall asleep. I think one time I nodded off live for like a moment, but
So I'm glad you brought that up to remind everybody. Paul on Stephen Colbert
Yes.
tonight, and since I mentioned my trivia, I'm going to be posting it within 20 minutes from now. The new
Okay.
one for the week on my website. So go to
Great.
kenmichaelsradio.com for that. Okay.
You ready? Great.
Alrighty.
And we didn't give contact information for this show, right?
Not yet.
Our email
Oh, no,
address.
we didn't.
Kit, you're the best at that.
Okay. Well, you can find us on Facebook. If you like our page, you will get automatic reminders of and notices of when we post a new show, and we post a lot of other fun things on there as well. So do check that out. You can follow us on Twitter at TalkMoreTalk1, and you can email us at talkmoresolotalk@gmail.com. Email us suggestions, and you just might find one of your ideas on our show.
Okay.
Yeah, very
All
good.
right. She's good at memorizing all that stuff.
And I just got
Tom-
a text from David. He won't leave me alone. I mean, he's off the show now. You know, leave me alone.
Well, maybe it will become three legs then.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
All right, so
Very
this has
good.
been great doing the show, and we want to thank my co-hosts here, Joe, Tom, and Kit. Thank all of our listeners, and we will see you all next time.